Hello and welcome to another discussion video. I'm here today with Kyle from Pensando Inglés. So Kyle has his own YouTube channel. Hello Kyle, how are you today?
Hello James, I'm doing very well today and I appreciate your time. I'm happy to have this conversation with a fellow content creator. We are on the same mission, so it's nice to work together and hopefully help the world learn some English.
Yeah, well, we are kind of doing similar things with our YouTube channel. But before we talk about like English, actually, I wanted to talk about your own language learning journey.
So at the moment, I would say I'm quote unquote learning French, but I am fluent in Spanish. That was the first language I ever learned, was Spanish. So I've studied several languages. I've got quite a bit of time studying French under my belt, a couple years now, but I've also dabbled in some Portuguese as well, but I'm definitely very comfortable in Spanish. I wouldn't say I'm comfortable in the other languages just yet.
Nice. Okay, so you think that you're pretty comfortable, pretty fluent in Spanish. So in that case, how did you learn Spanish? Like, can you tell me from the very beginning stages when you knew like no Spanish, zero Spanish, until now? Like, how did you manage this? Because it's difficult to learn a second language. So I'm sure people will be interested to hear how you did this.
So it is very, very interesting because I'm not sure about where you grew up, but where I grew up in the Midwest of the United States, you know, we have immigrants. There's a lot of Mexican Americans here, but for the most part, people just speak English. And you know, you don't meet people that speak 2 or 3 languages like you might in some other countries. So it is very unique. Among all my friends and family, I don't know anybody else that is fluent in a second language, let alone a third. So my journey has been a bit of a long one. You know, I went to high school with a lot of Mexican kids, and I really, you know, you hear them speaking Spanish, and being around it, you wish you could understand, right? You see and hear your friends speaking Spanish, and you're lost. You wish you could understand. So I tried the traditional methods. You know, I bought a book from Barnes & Noble that said it was a very easy way to learn Spanish, and you know, I couldn't even get through it. It was so boring, so difficult. So the traditional methods just never worked for me. You know, I've tried Duolingo, Babbel, and these apps, they have their place. You know, you could learn a little bit of vocabulary, but I'm of the belief that you could do Duolingo for 2 years every day, and you would probably still struggle to have a very basic conversation. So it all really started for me when I was about 27. My real learning started, and I was around a Mexican family. I was starting to spend a lot of time around these people. I had met somebody and was spending a lot of time with their family, and the family did not speak English. So here I am going to parties, going to dinners, and I can only communicate with one person there, and there's a whole group. You know, imagine me in a party with 100 Mexicans, and I'm the only one that doesn't speak Spanish. That's some good motivation, right? So,
I mean, that's really good motivation.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify. So you started. You obviously there was Spanish around you, but you didn't learn. Would you say you didn't really learn anything from your surroundings, like from the kids at school? Do you think you learned any Spanish from them?
the bad words and the insults. That's about it.
I was just going to say, I completely agree with you about Duolingo. Okay, I think that you're right. You said 2 years. I think you could spend a lifetime using Duolingo, completing all your Duolingo streaks, and still not be able to actually have a conversation in the language, I think. Mm-hmm. So Duolingo is just a language game, right? It's a game based on a language. It's not like really what you do to learn a language. It's just something extra. So Kyle, then, so if none of that worked, if all of those things, that the traditional book that you bought, Duolingo, Babbel, if none of it worked, then what did you do? to make it finally click with Spanish?
Well, so like I said, I'm surrounded by these people speaking Spanish. You know, I'm trying to use Babbel and Duolingo. It's not helping. And like I said, I went to a party with about 100 people speaking Spanish, and that was the last straw. I had decided right then and there, I'm going to learn this language no matter what. And that's an important thing, making that decision. That's huge. We could talk about that a little later, but let me answer your question. So because of that determination I had that I'm going to learn, I searched on YouTube how to really learn a language, how to learn Spanish, and I found a YouTube channel that absolutely changed my life, Dreaming Spanish, and it was incredible. I started watching the absolute super beginner videos, and Pablo, who is probably my favorite YouTuber ever because I've watched so many hours of him, he's drawing and speaking so slowly, and before you know it, you don't even realize it, but you're understanding, and it's all starting to click. So it all really started to make sense for me once I discovered comprehensible input, which is what Pablo's channel Dreaming Spanish is all about. That was like a before and after, not only in my language learning journey, but in my life, because languages have been such a huge part of my life.
How many hours do you think you watch? Like, do you have any idea? Like, have you been tracking the number of hours that you've watched Spanish comprehensible input?
So at that time, I wasn't keeping track, and I wasn't a member on the Dreaming Spanish site, which is awesome because it tracks your hours for you. I wish I was. But when I was at first just watching the YouTube videos, the free ones, and I don't know exactly how many, but to give you an idea, 2 hours a day on a slower day, sometimes 3. I was just binging. Everything I was watching on my phone was Dreaming Spanish, and then, you know, once you get to a certain level, you can start watching real content made for natives as comprehensible input. So it started with hours every day of Dreaming Spanish, just one after the other, working my way from the super beginner all the way up to the advanced. Hundreds of hours, hundreds at least.
You were doing 2 hours a day, right? Did you not get bored? Did you not get bored listening to Spanish 2 hours every single day?
Well, you know, that's the other thing about comprehensible input. If the person that's making it is doing it right, it should be fun. It should be entertaining. It should be like you're sitting there with a friend who speaks that language. I was never bored because, you know, Dreaming Spanish has so many different topics. No matter what you like, you're going to find something enjoyable for you. And that's what I try to recreate on my channel, and I know you as well are doing on English Sponge with so many different creators, so many different topics. But that's the thing. Reading a book, learning grammar, memorizing vocabulary, that would be so boring for 2 hours a day. But the upside, the plus of comprehensible input is I don't think you get bored nearly as fast as the traditional learning methods. And that's number one comment that I get on my channel is, wow, I watched this whole video, I never got bored. And people are so surprised that they could be learning and having fun at the same time, but that's the beauty of it.
You've used basically comprehensible input from like almost a complete beginner level all the way up to what you are now, which is like basically fluent in Spanish. Like, how is your Spanish? Like, do you think that using comprehensible input has been like given you better results than maybe other people who have used traditional methods? Do you think that the end result for you has been good using this method?
Absolutely, without a doubt. And you know, the benefit of comprehensible input versus, say, somebody who took a very extensive college course, you know, I'm sure that after 4 years of a very extensive college course in Spanish literature, things like that, you'll be speaking. But the thing is, I learned my Spanish the way that people actually speak it in the streets. You know, with Pablo, I was learning how Spaniards speak. He has Mexican speakers on there. I was learning how they speak. I learn how the Colombians speak. So it's really a beautiful thing. This conversation right now, if somebody is using it as comprehensible input, they're seeing how somebody from the Midwest United States speaks versus somebody with your accent. So it's really incredible. And you know, I was having conversations after a solid year of comprehensible input. I was having deep, good conversations, and that's unheard of in traditional learning.
That's really amazing, actually. After 1 year of studying, I'll put studying in like quotation marks, because it's like, is it studying? You know, just 1 year. I mean, like I've been an English teacher, like teaching classes for like 6 or 7 years. And I know like Chinese students and students from all over the world who study English for like 6 years at school, like using traditional methods. And by the time they finish their 6 years of English, they still can't hold a basic conversation after that time. And yet here you are, like after 1 year, having actual conversations with native speakers. It's just like kind of crazy, the difference between the two methods. Now, there are other factors, like children at school may be less motivated.
You certainly have a point that there is the motivation factor. But if you are motivated and you want to learn a language because you genuinely want to learn, which is the case for most adults watching this kind of content, they really want to learn, whether it's, you know, they want to speak with extended family, in-laws, their job, they want to move to a different country. Generally, the people I see on my channel are highly motivated. And when you have that mindset and then you start just devouring the content, the results speak for themselves. They come really quick, honestly.
When I see people on English Sponge who are like commenting on every single video, every new upload, I know that these people are going to get great results, right? Because they're just consuming content every single day. And to me, that's what it takes to learn a language, is you have to be doing it like every day. You were doing 2 hours a day. Honestly, I with Spanish, I've reached quite a good level of Spanish. I was only listening to about 30 minutes a day. Like it took me longer than you, okay? It took me more time because I spent less time each day listening to comprehensible input. But seriously, half an hour a day will get you pretty damn good results with comprehensible input. The other thing I like with comprehensible input is that you don't have to think about what you're going to do on that day. Like with other methods, you kind of waste time like trying to decide what you're gonna do. It's like, shall I do some grammar today? Shall I maybe read this book? Shall I speak or whatever? But if it's comprehensible input, there's no doubt. You just go straight to the input and you just start listening with no time wasted. Which is why I think it's also really good for really busy people, like busy professionals who don't have that much free time to learn, you know.
Definitely. Yeah, you know, I've got people on the channel that comment and say, you know, I'm a truck driver, I listen to you while I'm on the road. Or a lady in, I believe, Saudi Arabia told me the other day that she listens to me while she does her chores around the house. And that's the cool thing, you know, you could go for a walk and listen. You can do it while you're doing something else and use that time to learn as well as get your chores done. It's the way for a busy individual to learn a language, in my opinion.
So Kyle, like at this stage, like where is your Spanish? You say that you think you're fluent, right? But like how do you know? How do you know that you're fluent? And like how do you know what level you are, and like how do you know you're not just sort of like lying to yourself and actually you're still more like an intermediate student? How can you tell that? And when did you realize that you felt like really fluent in Spanish?
Well, you know, I have Colombian in-laws, so there's no faking that. And you know, I've been to Colombia. I had to go through the airport by myself all in Spanish. That's a pretty good test. But the real test is when you're listening to native speakers in real life, face to face, no subtitles. They're speaking so fast and you're not translating anymore. You're just thinking and understanding, and it's coming at you as information instead of words as in a foreign language. You know, I'm not claiming that my Spanish is perfect. I make mistakes all the time. Sometimes my dear Spanish speaking friends like to laugh when I say a word that should be feminine gender. I'll use the masculine gender or something like that. But it's all fun, it's all love, you know. So I could watch any show I want on Netflix. I could watch movies. I read full novels in Spanish. So that's another thing. Making mistakes doesn't determine if you're fluent or not. Being able to share special moments with somebody in that language, having deep conversations, that's my determining factor of if you're fluent or not. And I've done that with many people from all over the world. So that's how I tell about myself that I'm fluent. You know, sometimes I don't speak Spanish as much as I'd like to because my wife is Colombian. She'll speak Spanish and I'll speak English, and we just understand each other completely. So we just speak in the most comfortable way. So sometimes my Spanish will get a little rusty until we get around our friends and stuff, but I feel fully comfortable handling myself in Spanish.
So actually, judging by what you said, it sounds to me like you do have like a C1 advanced level of Spanish or higher, right? If you are fully understanding native speakers with no subtitles, if you are reading novels in Spanish, like full novels, you're definitely an advanced speaker of the language, right? There's no doubt. I'm from my own Spanish, I'm more like a B2. So at the B2 upper intermediate level, I do still need subtitles to understand people, and I cannot read a full novel in Spanish. I can try, but it is a bit of a struggle. And that's kind of the difference between like B2 and like C1 where you are, right? And I do hope to be able to reach your level of Spanish soon, hopefully in the next 5 or 6 months. How has it changed your life to learn another language? Like, how is your life different now when you couldn't speak Spanish to now that you can? Have things changed a lot generally in your life from this?
My life has changed so much. Languages have given me so much pleasure, so much confidence, so many new experiences. Now I can go to the party and not just sit by myself feeling lost, you know. Now I can go spend time with my in-laws in Bucaramanga in Colombia and have that nice dinner and speak, you know, and be part of the group. And my wife is Colombian, like I said, so that is one huge thing that changed, you know, in my life from learning Spanish. And when we first met, her English was very basic. So the first 6 months of our relationship were almost entirely in Spanish. So I think that tells you my life has changed quite a bit from learning this language.
So actually, if you had not found Dreaming Spanish, does that mean that you would, and if you had not found Comprehensible Input, does that mean that you would not have met your wife, would you say?
100%. If it was not for Dreaming Spanish, you know, my case specifically, but Comprehensible Input in general, I would not have been able to go on that first date with my wife because she couldn't speak and have a full conversation in English. So one of my goals as a YouTuber is to speak with Pablo from Dreaming Spanish and tell him how much his work has changed my life and how much I appreciate it.
That is actually a crazy story. I do hope that like English Sponge can help a couple get married one day. That would be a really cool thing. So Kyle, what is your YouTube channel? What are you doing with your own YouTube channel, Pensando Inglés?
Okay, so my YouTube channel is Pensando Inglés, and for anybody who doesn't speak Spanish, that literally is thinking English. And when I started that channel, I was basically just trying to help Spanish speakers, so I was doing probably 90% of my speaking in English, and then I would clarify a little bit here and there in Spanish. But now it has grown and grown and grown, and it's 100% in English. So we're reaching a much more worldwide audience now, and really what I do is comprehensible input, but what I use for the input is my own life, my own adventures, you know, my own hobbies. I show people the life of somebody here in the United States and just try and share the culture. Any interesting thing that I do in my life will likely be on my channel. So lately I've been cooking dishes from all over the world and showing people all the vocabulary, and people are really loving seeing their cultures represented. So it's English, it's culture, it's my life, vlogs, and we're having a good deal of success lately. So I'm really pleased with the four and a half years of work I've put in, with the results that we're finally getting.
Yeah, I think that you deserve it, right? Because you've been making videos for a long time, and only recently it seems like people have started to notice your channel. And I also think that only recently people have started to find out about that you can learn through comprehensible input. Like, I think when you started 4 years ago, like nobody had really heard of it. Probably people could not even understand what your videos were about, right? When you said comprehensible input. Yeah, I mean, on English Sponge, we got lots of different people like you, Carl, with making comprehensible input videos. And I think that yours are probably some of the best on there, right? We've got some good creators, but yours are, every time I go to your channel, usually I see something which is like really good. So, yeah, thanks for making awesome videos for that we can help to share.
Well, I appreciate that very much, but you know, like you said, it's just now picking up. I am far from a new YouTuber. People think I'm a new YouTuber, but what they don't see is I've had 4.5 years of practice and hard work, and that's why, you know, maybe I seem very comfortable on the camera, because I've sat here in front of this camera thousands of times. So with hard work, results come, and that goes for YouTube, personal goals, or definitely language learning.
Do you have any other final words, Carl, before we finish?
I'm super happy to finally speak with you. We've been trying to get this done for 2 months maybe. So I'm just very happy. I've been trying to share the English accent with my subscribers. I'm sure they'll be pleased to see this conversation. And thank you for your work as well on English Sponge, because, you know, I hope one day I'll be seen as one of the pioneers of English comprehensible input, but it's super cool to see now that other people are trying to make this content, and, you know, the movement is going in the right direction, and I appreciate you being a part of that.
Absolutely, yeah. I appreciate you having been in so early, making videos like into the void, right? Making comprehensible input videos into the void when nobody watches them for like 2 or 3 years. Nice. Look, thank you very much, guys. Thank you for listening, guys. We can end it there. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.